Daniel Calabra was 34 years old when he sat across from his ex-wife and her mother in a coffee shop he used to avoid because it reminded him of better times. They were begging for his help, their voices trembling with desperation. The irony wasn't lost on him. 2 years earlier, these same women had systematically destroyed his marriage, his reputation, and nearly his career. Now they needed him to save them from the consequences of their own choices, and Daniel had a decision to make that would change all their lives forever. But to understand why this moment mattered, we need to go back to where it all started. November 2022, when Daniel was still naive enough to believe that love and loyalty meant something. Daniel had met Linda Mitchell at a tech conference in Austin. She was 28, brilliant, and had this way of lighting up a room that made everyone want to be near her. Daniel was a software engineer at a mid-sized firm in Chicago, pulling in about $75,000 a year, comfortable, but nothing extravagant. Linda worked in marketing for a pharmaceutical company, making similar money. They were equals in every way that mattered, or so Daniel thought. The problem started the moment he met her mother, Patricia Mitchell. Patricia was a force of nature, and not in a good way. She'd been married 3 times, each husband wealthier than the last, and she'd mastered the art of trading up. By the time Daniel entered the picture, Patricia was living in a penthouse in downtown Chicago, courtesy of husband number 3's generous divorce settlement. Everything about Patricia screamed old money and new arrogance. Their first meeting was at Linda's apartment. Patricia looked Daniel up and down like he was a stain on her daughter's potential. "So, Daniel," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "Linda tells me you work in computers?" "Software engineering," Daniel corrected politely. "I specialize in cybersecurity infrastructure." "How quaint." Patricia sipped her wine. "And you went to, where was it, Linda? Some state school?" "University of Illinois," Daniel said, keeping his voice steady. "Full scholarship." Patricia's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Well, we can't all afford the Ivy League experience, can we?" Linda squeezed Daniel's hand under the table, but she didn't defend him. That should have been his first warning. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge, toxic family dynamics, injustice against the manipulative elite, like this video and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new stories here every day, each one more intense than the last, and tell me where you are watching from. The next 2 years were a masterclass in psychological warfare. Patricia didn't just dislike Daniel, she actively campaigned to remove him from Linda's life. It started subtly. Patricia would schedule expensive mother-daughter spa days on the weekends Daniel had planned dates with Linda. She'd call during their dinners with emergencies that always required Linda's immediate attention. She'd send Linda listings for luxury condos in neighborhoods Daniel could never afford, with messages like, "Just imagining your future, darling." But Daniel loved Linda, and Linda seemed to love him back. They got engaged in March 2023. Despite Patricia's visible disgust at the modest engagement ring Daniel had saved 6 months to buy. "Is that a quarter carat?" Patricia had asked, holding Linda's hand up to the light with theatrical disappointment. "It's half a carat," Linda said quietly, "and I love it." "Of course you do, sweetheart." Patricia patted her daughter's cheek. "You always were such a selfless girl." The wedding was set for October 2023. That's when Patricia's campaign went from passive-aggressive to actively destructive. She insisted on paying for the wedding, a gesture that seemed generous until Daniel realized it came with total control. Every decision became a battlefield. Patricia wanted the reception at the Ritz-Carlton. Daniel and Linda had chosen a charming vineyard in the suburbs that fit their budget. Patricia won. She wanted a 12-piece orchestra. They wanted a DJ and a playlist of their favorite songs. Patricia won. She wanted 200 guests. They wanted an intimate gathering of 75. Patricia won every single time. "She's paying for it," Linda would say, her voice getting smaller with each compromise. "We should let her have some input." But it wasn't input. It was a hostile takeover. The final straw came 3 weeks before the wedding. Daniel arrived at Linda's apartment to find Patricia there, along with a man Daniel had never seen before. He was tall, impeccably dressed, probably in his early 30s. "Daniel, this is Jonathan Blackwood," Patricia said with a smile that made Daniel's stomach drop. "He's the son of Charles Blackwood. You know, Blackwood Industries." Jonathan and Linda went to college together. Jonathan extended his hand. His watch probably cost more than Daniel's car. Great to finally meet you, man. Linda's told me so much about you. But Linda was looking at the floor, her face flushed. Jonathan just moved back to Chicago, Patricia continued. He's going to be the VP of Strategic Development at his father's company. Isn't that wonderful? I invited him to the wedding, of course. He and Linda were so close back in their Northwestern days. They had no idea what Daniel would discover about their little reunion, but he would find out soon enough. And when he did, everything would change. The wedding itself was a blur of forced smiles and expensive champagne. Daniel felt like a prop in someone else's production. Patricia had even chosen his tuxedo. She'd sent it to his apartment with a note that read, "You'll want to look the part, dear." But he married Linda because he loved her, because he believed they could build a life together once they got away from Patricia's influence. He was wrong. The first year of marriage was suffocating. Patricia called Linda every single day, sometimes multiple times. She'd show up at their modest two-bedroom apartment unannounced, always with some criticism disguised as concern. "Linda, darling, have you gained weight? Marriage does that to some women. Daniel, I hope you're not expecting Linda to clean up after you. She's not a maid, you know. This neighborhood is so urban. Wouldn't you both be more comfortable somewhere safer?" Daniel started working longer hours just to avoid being home when Patricia visited. His career was actually going well. He'd gotten a promotion to senior engineer and was now making $92,000 a year. It was a significant bump, and he'd hoped it might earn him some respect from Patricia. Instead, she'd laughed when Linda told her. 92,000? Jonathan made that as a signing bonus at his first job. That's when Daniel noticed Linda starting to change. She began mentioning Jonathan more often. Jonathan said this about the market. Jonathan suggested that restaurant. Jonathan's company is doing this innovative thing. Daniel tried to ignore the knot forming in his stomach. He trusted Linda. He loved her. They'd made vows. Then came February 2024, and everything fell apart. Daniel came home early from a conference that had been canceled due to a snowstorm. He walked into their apartment and heard voices in the kitchen. Linda's voice and a man's voice. Jonathan's voice. "You deserve better than this," Jonathan was saying. "Look at this place, Linda. You're living like a college student." "It's not that bad," Linda said, but her voice was uncertain. "Your mother told me what you gave up to be with him. The opportunities, the lifestyle. You could have had everything." Daniel stood frozen in the hallway, his heart pounding. "Jonathan, I'm married. We shouldn't be. Are you happy? Really happy?" The silence that followed told Daniel everything he needed to know. He cleared his throat and walked into the kitchen. Jonathan was standing close to Linda, too close. They jumped apart like teenagers caught making out. "Daniel!" Linda's face went pale. "You're home early." "Obviously." Daniel looked at Jonathan. "What are you doing here?" "I was just dropping off some marketing materials," Jonathan said smoothly. "My company is working with Linda's firm on a partnership. We were discussing strategy." But there were no materials on the counter, no laptops open, just 2 glasses of wine and guilty expressions. "I think you should leave," Daniel said quietly. Jonathan grabbed his coat, but not before Patricia's training kicked in. "Good to see you, Daniel. Linda, we'll continue this conversation later." After he left, Linda tried to explain. "It's not what it looked like. He really was here for work. At 7 o'clock at night, in our home, drinking wine. My mother invited him. She thought it would be good for my career to—" "Your mother." Daniel felt something crack inside him. "Your mother is trying to set you up with another man while you're married to me. That's not true. She just wants what's best for me. And I'm not what's best for you?" Linda didn't answer, and in that silence, Daniel felt his marriage slipping away. Over the next 3 months, the situation escalated. Patricia became bolder, openly inviting Jonathan to family dinners and events. She'd seat him next to Linda, engage him in lengthy conversations while excluding Daniel. She started telling people at these gatherings that Daniel was Linda's first husband, using past tense while he was still very much present. Linda didn't defend him. She just squeezed his hand under the table and changed the subject. But she never told her mother to stop. Daniel started documenting everything. He didn't know why at first. Maybe just to preserve his own sanity, to prove to himself that he wasn't imagining the psychological torture. He kept a journal of Patricia's comments, Jonathan's visits, Linda's growing distance. In April 2024, Daniel hired a private investigator. He hated himself for it, but he needed to know the truth. The investigator's name was Rebecca Torres, a former police detective who specialized in infidelity cases. What she found broke him. Linda and Jonathan had been meeting for lunch twice a week at a restaurant in the financial district. They'd been seen together at a hotel bar in the Loop on 3 separate occasions. The photographs Rebecca showed him were devastating, Linda laughing at something Jonathan said, their hands touching across the table, the way she looked at him. But there was no evidence of physical infidelity. They were careful, or maybe they hadn't crossed that line yet. Daniel didn't know which option hurt more. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel if you have not, because the ending of this story will blow your mind. And drop a comment below telling me what you think Daniel should do next. Daniel confronted Linda with the evidence on a Tuesday evening in late May. He laid the photographs on their kitchen table like cards in a poker game he was destined to lose. Linda's reaction wasn't denial. It was defiance. "You had me followed?" She was angry, as if he'd committed the greater betrayal. "You've been lying to me for months. I haven't done anything wrong. Jonathan is a friend. We have lunch. We talk." "That's not a crime. You're emotionally cheating on me, Linda. You know it, I know it, and your mother is orchestrating the whole thing. Don't bring my mother into this. Your mother is the reason we're in this mess. She's been trying to replace me with Jonathan since the day we met." Linda's face hardened. Maybe she sees something I'm finally starting to see, which is that I settled. The word hung in the air between them like a grenade. Daniel felt it detonate in his chest. "You settled," he repeated slowly. "I'm sorry, Daniel. I do love you, but Jonathan can give me the life I should have had, the life my mother had. I'm tired of budgeting for groceries and worrying about student loans. I'm tired of living in a cramped apartment when I could have a home, a real home. We are building a real home. Together." "No." Linda's voice was firm now, probably channeling every conversation she'd had with her mother and Jonathan. "You're building your idea of a home. I want more." Daniel packed a bag that night and stayed at his friend David's place. He couldn't look at Linda without seeing the stranger she'd become, or maybe the person she'd always been underneath the image he'd projected onto her. He filed for divorce the next week. The divorce proceedings were brutal. Patricia hired Linda an attorney from one of Chicago's most prestigious firms, a shark named Mitchell Landry, who'd made his reputation destroying husbands in divorce court. Daniel couldn't afford that caliber of lawyer, so he hired a competent but overworked attorney named Tom Reeves who charged a fraction of the price. Linda wanted half of everything, including the small amount of money Daniel had inherited from his grandmother, about $40,000 that he'd kept in a separate account. She wanted spousal support. She wanted the car, even though it was in his name, and he'd bought it before they met. Patricia funded Linda's entire legal battle. She also funded something else, Linda and Jonathan's new relationship, because that's what happened. The moment the divorce papers were filed, Linda moved out of their apartment and into a luxury condo in River North. Jonathan's condo. Patricia made sure Daniel knew about it too. She'd send Linda's new address to him, accidentally, in an email meant for someone else. She'd post photos on social media of Linda and Jonathan at upscale restaurants, art galleries, charity galas. The message was clear. Look what she has now. Look what you could never give her. But Daniel wasn't just sitting around feeling sorry for himself. He was planning. Because here's what Patricia and Linda and Jonathan didn't know. Daniel was very, very good at his job. Exceptional, actually. And in June 2024, while his divorce was being finalized, Daniel got a call from a headhunter representing a cybersecurity firm in San Francisco. They'd heard about his work on a major security infrastructure project and wanted him to lead their new defensive systems division. The salary? $220,000 a year, plus stock options. Daniel accepted the offer, but didn't tell anyone except Tom, his attorney. He delayed the start date until after the divorce was finalized in August 2024. The court didn't know about his new job because he hadn't started it yet, so the spousal support calculations were based on his old salary. Linda got 40% of their shared assets, which wasn't much since they'd only been married for 2 years. She got $5,000 in spousal support to be paid over 1 year. She didn't get Daniel's inheritance. Tom had successfully argued it was separate property. Patricia was furious that she hadn't gotten more, but she consoled herself with the fact that Linda was now with Jonathan, who'd just been promoted to senior vice president at his father's company. Daniel moved to San Francisco in September 2024 and started his new life. The job was incredible. The team respected him. He bought a modest house in Oakland with a view of the bay. He started dating someone, a kind, intelligent woman named Lisa, who was a data scientist at a renewable energy company. She had her own money, her own career, her own life. She didn't need Daniel for anything except companionship. For the first time in years, Daniel felt free. Then 3 weeks ago, he got a call from Linda. Her voice was shaking. "Daniel, I need to talk to you. Can we meet?" "Why would we do that?" "Please, it's important. My mother and we need your help." Daniel should have said no, should have hung up and blocked her number. But curiosity got the better of him. He happened to be in Chicago for a work conference, so he agreed to meet them at that coffee shop downtown. That's where the story began, with Daniel sitting across from the two women who'd made his life hell, watching them squirm. "So," Daniel said, stirring his coffee slowly, "what kind of help do you need?" Patricia, for once in her life, looked small, diminished. "It's Jonathan." "Your replacement for me? What about him?" Linda's eyes were red from crying. "He's not who we thought he was, Daniel. He's conned us, both of us." Daniel sat back in his chair. "I'm listening." And what they told him next was so shocking, so perfectly karmic, that Daniel had to fight to keep the smile off his face. They had no idea what was coming. They had no idea that Daniel held all the cards now. But he did, and he was about to play them perfectly. Patricia's hands were shaking as she pushed a folder across the table toward Daniel. Inside were bank statements, legal documents, and what looked like threatening emails. Daniel didn't touch it immediately. He wanted to savor this moment, to watch the woman who'd spent years looking down on him finally ask for his help. "Jonathan Blackwood isn't who he claimed to be," Patricia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "His real name is Jonathan Blake. He's a con artist." Daniel raised his eyebrows. "A con artist? The son of Charles Blackwood of Blackwood Industries?" "There is no Blackwood Industries," Linda said, her voice breaking. "Or rather, there is, but Jonathan has nothing to do with it. The real Jonathan Blackwood died in a car accident in 2019. This man stole his identity." Daniel let that sink in. The man Patricia had pushed on her daughter, the man she'd held up as superior to Daniel in every way, was a fraud. The irony was almost too perfect. "How did you find out?" Daniel asked. Linda wiped her eyes. "We were planning to get married. Jonathan proposed 3 months ago. My mother was helping me plan the wedding. A real wedding this time," she kept saying. "Something worthy of the Blackwood name." Patricia flinched at her daughter's words but didn't interrupt. "Jonathan said his father would wire the money for the wedding as a gift," Linda continued. $500,000. He showed us the account information, the transfer details. My mother and I were supposed to put in $50,000 each as a sign of commitment to the union. Some Blackwood family tradition he claimed existed. Daniel could see where this was going, but he let Linda tell it. "We transferred the money in October. Jonathan said it would all go into a joint wedding account that we'd access together. Except," Linda's voice cracked again, "the account was fake. The money disappeared. And when we tried to contact Jonathan's father's office, we found out there was no office. The phone numbers went to burner phones. The emails bounced back. We lost everything," Patricia added quietly. "I put in my $50,000. Linda put in hers. Jonathan had convinced us to invest in other opportunities too. A real estate development deal, a tech startup, all fake." "How much?" Daniel asked. Patricia closed her eyes. "Between both of us, about $350,000. Daniel let out a low whistle. "That's substantial." "There's more," Linda said. "When we confronted Jonathan, he laughed at us. He said we were so eager to believe in his wealth and status that we never bothered to verify anything. He said my mother had made it easy by being such a snob. by caring more about money and prestige than actual character. The dig at Patricia's values was clear, and Daniel could see it landed. Patricia looked like she'd aged 5 years in the past few months. "Where's Jonathan now?" Daniel asked. "Gone," Patricia said. "He disappeared 2 weeks ago, cleared out the condo, which it turns out he was renting, not owning. The lease was under a fake name. He's vanished completely." Daniel sat back in his chair. "So let me understand this correctly. You both gave hundreds of thousands of dollars to a man you never properly vetted, a man you chose over me specifically because of his apparent wealth and status. And now that he's robbed you blind and disappeared, you want what exactly?" Linda looked at him with desperate eyes. "We want you to help us find him. You work in cybersecurity. You understand technology, digital footprints, all of that. We need your expertise. Why would I help you?" The question hung in the air. Patricia and Linda exchanged glances. "Because you're a good person," Linda said finally. "Because despite everything we did to you, you're better than us. You always were." It was the first honest thing Linda had said to him in years, but Daniel wasn't moved. Not yet. "You humiliated me," he said calmly. "You, Linda, chose wealth and status over the man who loved you. You, Patricia, spent 2 years undermining my marriage and treating me like I wasn't good enough to breathe the same air as your daughter. You celebrated when we divorced. You posted pictures of Linda with Jonathan like you were rubbing my face in your upgrade, and now you want my help? If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and let me know in the comments what you would have done in Daniel's situation." Patricia's composure finally cracked. Tears ran down her face. Real tears. Not the calculated kind Daniel had seen her use to manipulate Linda over the years. "You're right," Patricia whispered. "Everything you said is true. I was horrible to you. I judged you based on your bank account instead of your character. I pushed my daughter toward a fantasy instead of appreciating the real thing. And now we're both paying the price." Daniel picked up the folder and started flipping through the documents. The bank statements showed the transfers Linda had mentioned. The emails from Jonathan were sophisticated, professional language, corporate letterhead, carefully constructed lies. The photos showed Jonathan at various events, always dressed impeccably, always playing the part. "Have you gone to the police?" Daniel asked. "Yes," Linda said. "They took a report, but they said cases like this are difficult to prosecute. Jonathan covered his tracks well. The money was transferred to offshore accounts. The trail goes cold in the Cayman Islands. They said without more evidence, there's not much they can do." Daniel nodded slowly. "And you think I can find this evidence?" "We think you're our only chance," Patricia said. Daniel closed the folder and looked at both women. He could see the desperation in their eyes, the shame, the regret. Part of him, the part that Linda had loved once, wanted to help just because it was the right thing to do. But another part of him, the part that had been crushed and discarded, wanted them to suffer the way he'd suffered. "I'll think about it," he said finally, "but I'm not making any promises." He stood to leave, but Linda grabbed his hand. "Daniel, there's something else, something I need to tell you." He waited. "Jonathan knew everything about you," Linda said. "He knew about your job, your salary, your background. He used it all to manipulate me. He'd say things like, 'You deserve better than a mid-level engineer who can barely afford to take you to nice restaurants.' He made me feel like I was selling myself short by staying with you. That's what con artists do," Daniel said. "They find your insecurities and exploit them." "But I let him," Linda said, her voice thick with emotion. "I let my mother's values become my values. I let myself believe that money and status mattered more than loyalty and love. And now I've lost everything, including the only man who ever really loved me for who I am." Daniel gently removed his hand from hers. "That's something you'll have to live with." "Linda, I can't fix that for you." He left the coffee shop and walked back to his hotel, his mind racing. He had a decision to make, and it wasn't a simple one. The next morning, Daniel called Rebecca Torres, the private investigator who'd helped him during his divorce. She was still in Chicago, still taking cases. "Rebecca, I need your help with something unusual," he said. "I'm looking for a con artist who's using the identity of a dead man." "Interesting," Rebecca said. "Tell me more." Daniel explained the situation, leaving out some of the personal details. Rebecca listened quietly, asking occasional questions. "This is a serious case," as she said when he finished. "But I have to ask, why are you doing this? These women destroyed you. Why help them?" Daniel had been asking himself the same question all night. "Because letting Jonathan get away with this makes me complicit in a way. He used their snobbery and greed against them, sure, but he's still a predator. And if I have the skills to stop him, maybe I should." "That's very noble of you," Rebecca said, and Daniel could hear the skepticism in her voice. But I'm also not going to pretend I don't enjoy the irony of them coming to me for help. The man they dismissed as not good enough is now their only hope." Rebecca laughed. "Now that sounds more honest. I'm in. Send me everything you have." Over the next week, Daniel worked with Rebecca to build a profile of Jonathan Blake. They started with the basic identity theft, finding out when and how he'd assumed the real Jonathan Blackwood's identity. Rebecca discovered that Blake had been working cons for at least 8 years, primarily targeting wealthy divorced women and their daughters. His pattern was consistent: infiltrate social circles, establish a fake identity with impressive credentials, romance the target, extract money through fake investment opportunities, and disappear before anyone could verify his claims. "He's good," Rebecca admitted during one of their calls. "He creates entire fake companies, complete with websites, phone systems, and professional-looking documentation. He's probably working with a team." Daniel dug into the digital side. He analyzed the email headers from the messages Jonathan had sent to Linda and Patricia. Most had been sent through VPNs and encrypted networks, but one, just one, had been sent from a regular IP address. Jonathan had made a mistake, probably during a moment of carelessness. The IP address traced back to a coffee shop in Miami, Florida. It wasn't much, but it was something. "Miami," Rebecca said. "That fits. Lots of wealthy targets, transient population, easy to blend in. I'll start asking around down there." While Rebecca worked her contacts in Miami, Daniel did something he hadn't planned on doing. He started digging into Patricia and Linda's finances, not to help them, but to understand the full scope of what Jonathan had taken. What he found surprised him. Patricia's $50,000 wasn't just savings. It was nearly everything she had left. Her divorce settlement from husband number 3 had been generous, but she'd burned through most of it maintaining her luxury lifestyle. The penthouse was mortgaged. The designer clothes and expensive dinners had drained her accounts. She'd been living paycheck to paycheck while pretending to be wealthy. Linda's finances were even worse. She'd quit her job at the pharmaceutical company to focus on wedding planning at Jonathan's suggestion. She'd been living off the money Jonathan had given her, money that, Daniel now realized, was probably from previous cons. When Jonathan disappeared, Linda had nothing. She'd moved back in with Patricia, and they were both drowning in debt. The karma was almost too perfect. Daniel called Linda. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." "Okay," she said warily. "Are you and your mother in financial trouble? Beyond just the money Jonathan stole?" There was a long silence, then, "Yes, we're about to lose the penthouse. My mother can't make the mortgage payments. I have no job, no savings. We're in a really bad place, Daniel. Why didn't you tell me this at the coffee shop?" "Pride, I guess. Even now, even after everything, it's hard to admit how far we've fallen." Daniel felt a flicker of something. Not quite sympathy, but close. "I'm working on finding Jonathan. I can't promise anything, but if I do find him, recovering your money isn't going to be easy. He's probably already moved it or spent it." "I know," Linda said, "but at least if you find him, he can face consequences. That's something." 2 weeks later, Rebecca called Daniel with news. "I found him," she said, her voice triumphant. "Or rather, I found evidence of him. He's in Miami, working another con. New identity this time. He's going by Richard Thornton now, claiming to be a venture capitalist. He's targeting a widow who owns a chain of fitness studios." "How do you want to play this?" Daniel asked. "That depends on you," Rebecca said. "We can turn this over to the FBI. I've already contacted an agent who handles identity theft and fraud cases. They're interested, or what? Or you can confront him yourself. Get him on record admitting what he did to Linda and Patricia. With that evidence plus what I've gathered, The FBI case becomes much stronger. Daniel thought about it. Confronting Jonathan or Richard or whatever his real name was held a certain appeal, but it was also risky. What would that look like? He asked. I've got his schedule. He meets potential marks at a specific restaurant every Friday evening, upscale place in Coral Gables. You could accidentally run into him. Wear a wire. Get him talking. You think he'd talk to me? Men like him are arrogant, Rebecca said. They love bragging about their cons to people they think they've beaten. If you approach it right, appeal to his ego, he might just tell you everything. Daniel made his decision. Set it up. I'm coming to Miami. He flew out the following Thursday. Rebecca met him at the airport and briefed him on the operation. The FBI agent she'd contacted, Special Agent Maria Gonzalez, was on board with the plan. They'd wire Daniel and have backup nearby. Just get him talking, Agent Gonzalez instructed. Ask about his work, his past success. Men like Blake can't resist showing off. Friday evening, Daniel walked into the restaurant in Coral Gables wearing a tailored suit and a hidden recording device. He spotted Jonathan, now Richard Thornton, at the bar, chatting with an attractive woman in her 50s. The widow, probably. Daniel waited until Jonathan excused himself to take a phone call, then intercepted him near the restrooms. Jonathan? Jonathan Blackwood? Jonathan's face went through a rapid series of expressions. Surprise, recognition, calculation. Then he smiled, completely unfazed. I'm sorry. You've got the wrong person. My name is Richard Thornton. Really? Because you look exactly like the man who dated my ex-wife. Linda Mitchell? Daughter of Patricia Mitchell? Jonathan's smile widened. Ah, Daniel. I heard about you. The poor engineer who lost his wife to a better man. Is that what you think you were? A better man? I was a more interesting option, Jonathan said, but I'm guessing you didn't come all the way to Miami just to trade insults. What do you want? Daniel leaned against the wall, keeping his body language casual. I'm curious, how does a con artist choose his targets? What made Linda and Patricia so appealing? Jonathan laughed, actually laughed. You want to know my secrets? That's bold. Consider it professional curiosity. You fooled a lot of people. That takes skill. The flattery worked. Jonathan's ego couldn't resist. They made it easy. Patricia was so desperate to upgrade her daughter's life that she never questioned anything. Linda was so ashamed of settling for you that she jumped at the first chance to trade up. All I had to do was show them what they wanted to see. Wealth, status, access to a better world. And the money, the investments? Classic greed play. Promise them even more wealth. Make them feel like insiders on exclusive opportunities. People who care more about money than people are the easiest marks in the world. Daniel felt the wire against his chest, recording every word. How much did you get from them total? About $350,000, Jonathan said proudly. Not my biggest score, but respectable. The wedding fund scheme was particularly elegant, I thought, using their own snobbery about tradition against them. Where's the money now? Jonathan's eyes narrowed slightly. Why? You planning to try to get it back? Good luck with that. It's been moved through enough offshore accounts that even the FBI couldn't trace it at this point. The FBI is looking for you? The FBI is always looking for someone like me, Jonathan said with a shrug. But they never find me. I'm too good at what I do. New city, new identity, new targets. It's like being an actor who never breaks character. What about the woman you're with tonight? Another Mark? Beautiful, isn't she? Recently widowed, owns a successful business, emotionally vulnerable. She'll write me a check for $250,000 within 3 months, thinking she's investing in a revolutionary fintech startup. And then Richard Thornton will disappear, just like Jonathan Blackwood did. Daniel had heard enough. He had Jonathan on record admitting to the con, the amount stolen, and his intention to victimize someone else. Agent Gonzalez would have everything she needed. You know what's interesting? Daniel said. You're right that you're good at reading people, but you made one mistake. What's that? You underestimated me. You thought I was just some nobody Linda had settled for. You never considered that I might be the one person who could bring you down. Jonathan's smile faded. What are you talking about? Daniel pulled out his phone and played back the recording of their conversation. Jonathan's face went pale. That's illegal, he stammered. You can't record someone without their consent in Florida. Actually, Florida is a two-party consent state for private conversations, Daniel said. But we're in a public place, and I consented to recording myself. Plus, law enforcement can authorize recordings in fraud investigations. Care to guess who authorized this one? FBI agents appeared from various positions around the restaurant. Agent Gonzalez stepped forward, holding up her badge. Richard Thornton, also known as Jonathan Blake, also known as Jonathan Blackwood, you're under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit fraud. As the agents handcuffed Jonathan, he looked at Daniel with something like respect. Well played, he said. I didn't see that coming. That's because you were so focused on feeling superior that you missed the actual threat, Daniel said. Same mistake Linda and Patricia made with me. Agent Gonzalez led Jonathan away. The widow he'd been scamming approached Daniel, looking confused and shaken. Is it true? She asked. Was he trying to steal from me? Yes, ma'am, Daniel said gently. I'm sorry, but you're safe now. She thanked him with tears in her eyes, and Daniel felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about stopping a predator from hurting anyone else. He flew back to Chicago the next day. Linda and Patricia were waiting at the coffee shop. He texted them to meet him there. When he walked in, they both stood up, hope written all over their faces. Did you find him? Patricia asked. I did better than that, Daniel said. I got him arrested. He explained what had happened in Miami, playing the recording of Jonathan's confession. Both women listened in stunned silence. He admitted it all, Linda whispered. Every word. Agent Gonzalez says they have enough to prosecute. He's looking at serious federal prison time. Patricia covered her face with her hands. Thank you. Daniel, thank you so much. Don't thank me yet, Daniel said. The money is still going to be hard to recover. Jonathan wasn't lying about that. The FBI will try, but you might not get much back. I don't care about the money anymore, Linda said. I just want him to face justice. Daniel looked at her carefully. Really? Because a month ago you cared very much about money. It's why you left me. Linda's face crumpled. I know what I did to you, Daniel. I threw away something real for something fake. I hurt the one person who actually loved me because I was too shallow to see what mattered. Your mother taught you that, Daniel said, looking at Patricia. She taught you that a man's worth is measured by his bank account. Patricia nodded, tears streaming down her face. I did, and I was wrong. I was so wrong about everything. Daniel sat down across from them. Here's what I learned from all of this. Jonathan conned you because your values made you vulnerable. You wanted wealth and status more than you wanted truth or character. That's a choice you both made. We know, Patricia said quietly. We know, and we're sorry. But here's the thing about Jonathan, Daniel continued. He's a predator, yes, but he's also a mirror. He reflected back exactly what you wanted to see. In a weird way, you created him. Linda looked stricken. That's harsh. It's honest, Daniel corrected. And if you're really going to change, you need to understand that. He pulled out his laptop and opened a document. I've been doing some research into your financial situation. You're both in serious trouble. The penthouse is going into foreclosure. You have credit card debt, unpaid bills, no income. Even if the FBI recovers some of the money Jonathan stole, it won't be enough. We know, and Patricia said. We're going to have to declare bankruptcy. Start over. Daniel nodded. That's one option, but I have another suggestion. He turned the laptop to face them. On the screen was a job listing for a marketing director position at a pharmaceutical company in San Francisco, a competitor to Linda's old employer, and a company Daniel had connections with through his work. I can get you an interview, Daniel told Linda. The pay is good, about $90,000 to start. It's not Jonathan's fake wealth, but it's honest work. Linda stared at the screen. You'd do that for me? After everything? I'd do it because you're still talented at your job, Daniel said, and because you deserve a chance to build something real for yourself. He pulled up another document. And Patricia, I found a financial counselor who specializes in debt management. She can help you restructure your debts, develop a budget, maybe save the penthouse if you're willing to make some serious lifestyle changes. Patricia looked at the information, then at Daniel. Why are you helping us? Because I'm not like Jonathan, Daniel said simply. I don't get my worth from other people's suffering, and despite what you both did to me, I don't want to see you destroy yourselves. For the first time since the marriage ended, Linda looked at Daniel and really saw him. Not as the man she'd settled for or the husband she'd traded up from, but as the person he'd always been. Kind, intelligent, decent. I'm so sorry, she whispered. Daniel, I'm so sorry for all of it. Daniel stood up. I accept your apology, but I want to be clear about something. I'm not doing this to get you back. I'm not doing this because I'm still in love with you. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. I understand, Linda said, and I don't deserve even this much grace from you. Maybe not, Daniel agreed, but I'm giving it anyway. He closed his laptop and prepared to leave. The FBI will be in touch about the case. They'll need statements from both of you. Be honest, be thorough, and don't hold anything back. That's the only way Jonathan faces real consequences. As Daniel walked toward the door, Patricia called out to him. Daniel? One more question. He turned back. Are you happy now, in San Francisco, with your new life? Daniel thought about his job, his house with the view of the bay, Lisa, and the easy, comfortable relationship they were building. He thought about the freedom of living without Patricia's constant judgment and Linda's wavering loyalty. Yes, he said. I really am. And for the first time in years, it was completely true. 6 months later, Daniel received an email from Agent Gonzalez with the subject line, United States versus Jonathan Blake, case update. He opened it while sitting in his home office, early morning sunlight streaming through the windows. Lisa was downstairs making coffee, humming along to the radio. It was a Saturday, peaceful and ordinary in the best possible way. The email detailed Jonathan Blake's conviction on multiple counts of wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. He'd been sentenced to 12 years in federal prison and ordered to pay restitution to his victims. The FBI had managed to recover about 40% of the stolen funds through asset forfeiture and cooperation from international banking authorities. For Linda and Patricia, that meant they'd each get back approximately $70,000. Not everything they'd lost, but substantial. Daniel forwarded the email to both of them with a simple message. Justice served. Hope you're both doing well. Linda's reply came within minutes. Thank you for everything, Daniel. You saved us in more ways than one. Patricia's response took longer. I will never be able to repay what you've done for us. You showed more character in helping us than I showed in 2 years of knowing you. I'm sorry it took losing everything for me to see that. Daniel read both messages and felt nothing dramatic. No surge of vindication, no bitter satisfaction, just a quiet sense of closure. The truth was, the best revenge hadn't been seeing Jonathan arrested or getting Linda and Patricia's apologies. The best revenge had been building a life so good that their return to his world barely registered as a ripple. Lisa appeared in the doorway, holding 2 mugs of coffee. Everything okay? She asked, noticing his expression. Just closing a chapter, Daniel said, accepting the coffee with a smile. How do you feel about brunch at that place near Lake Merritt? The one with the amazing French toast? I'm in. They spent the day wandering through Oakland's farmers market, picking out fresh produce and artisanal bread. Lisa knew about Linda and the divorce. Daniel had been honest about his past from the beginning, but she didn't ask about the email. She trusted him to share what mattered and leave behind what didn't. That trust, Daniel had learned, was worth more than any amount of money or status. The following Monday, Daniel got a call from Rebecca Torres. Did you hear about the sentencing? She asked. I did. 12 years. That's substantial. It is. And there's something else you should know. Jonathan's arrest triggered investigations in 4 other states. Turns out he'd been running variations of the same con for nearly a decade. The FBI estimates he stole close to $4 million total from at least 23 victims. Daniel let out a low whistle. 23 people. 23 that they know of, Rebecca corrected. Could be more. But because you got him on record and helped the FBI build their case, they were able to connect him to the other crimes. You didn't just save Linda and Patricia, you saved future victims. After the call, Daniel sat at his desk, thinking about the ripple effects of his decision to help his ex-wife and former mother-in-law. He could have walked away, could have let Jonathan continue his schemes, could have let Patricia and Linda suffer the consequences of their choices without intervention. But he hadn't. And because of that choice, Jonathan was in prison and his con ring was dismantled. Maybe that was the real lesson in all of this. That doing the right thing wasn't about the people you were helping. It was about the person you wanted to be. 3 months later, Linda called him. It was the first time they'd spoken since he'd forwarded the FBI's email. "Hi, Daniel. I hope I'm not interrupting anything. Just finishing up some work. What's going on? I wanted to update you on everything. I got the job in San Francisco, the one you helped me interview for." "That's great, Linda. Congratulations. I start next month. I'm moving out there, actually. I found an apartment in the Mission District. It's small, but it's mine. I'm paying for it with my own money from my own job." Daniel heard the pride in her voice and genuinely felt happy for her. "That's a big step." "It is. And my mother, she's doing better too. She sold the penthouse, downsized to a one-bedroom apartment in a different neighborhood. She got a job as a consultant for a nonprofit that helps women escaping financial abuse. The pay is minimal, but she says it's the most meaningful work she's ever done." "Sounds like you're both rebuilding." "We are. We're also both in therapy, separately and together. We're working through a lot of the toxic patterns that led us to someone like Jonathan in the first place." There was a pause. Then Linda said quietly, "I know this is asking a lot, but when I move to San Francisco, would you maybe be willing to meet for coffee? Just as friends. I'd like to thank you properly." Daniel thought about it. The old Daniel, the one who'd been hurt and betrayed, would have said no, would have kept his distance, protected his boundaries. But the new Daniel understood that forgiveness didn't mean letting people hurt you again. It meant releasing the anger so it didn't poison your own life. "Sure," he said. "Coffee as friends? I'll bring Lisa, my girlfriend. I think you'd like her." "I'd like that," Linda said, and Daniel could hear the relief in her voice. "Thank you, Daniel, for everything." After they hung up, Lisa came into his office. She'd been listening from the hallway, not eavesdropping exactly, but present. "You're meeting your ex-wife for coffee?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "As friends, with you there. Is that okay?" Lisa sat on the edge of his desk. "Do you still have feelings for her?" "No," Daniel said honestly. "What I feel is more like empathy, I guess. She made terrible choices, but she's trying to be better. And I think I'm secure enough in what we have to extend that olive branch." Lisa kissed the top of his head. "That's very evolved of you. I'm proud of you. Are you really okay with it?" "I am, because I trust you, and because I'm not threatened by your past. Your ex-wife spent years trying to trade you for something better and ended up with nothing. I got you at your best." "There's no competition there." Daniel pulled her into his lap. "How did I get so lucky?" "You didn't get lucky," Lisa said with a smile. "You made good choices. You worked on yourself. You chose kindness over bitterness. That's not luck. That's character." The coffee meeting happened 6 weeks later at a cafe in Hayes Valley. Daniel and Lisa arrived first, securing a table by the window. When Linda walked in, Daniel was struck by how different she looked. She'd cut her hair short, wore minimal makeup, and dressed in simple professional clothes. No designer labels or luxury accessories. She looked younger somehow, less burdened. "Hi," she said nervously. "Thank you for meeting me. Linda, this is Lisa." "Lisa, Linda." The two women shook hands, sizing each other up in the way that ex-partners and current partners always do. But Lisa's confidence and Linda's humility diffused any potential awkwardness. "Daniel has told me a lot about you," Lisa said warmly. "Congratulations on the new job." "Thank you. I'm still getting used to it, but I love the work." Linda turned to Daniel. "And thank you for making the introduction. My boss said your recommendation carried a lot of weight." "You earned the job on your own merit," Daniel said. "I just opened the door." They ordered drinks and settled into surprisingly easy conversation. Linda talked about her therapy sessions, the insights she was gaining about her relationship with her mother and money. She talked about the nonprofit Patricia was working for, and how much it had changed her mother's perspective. She actually apologized to me, Linda said. A real apology, not the half-hearted kind she used to give. She acknowledged that she raised me with toxic values, that she taught me to measure people by their wealth instead of their character. It was healing. That takes courage, Lisa said, both to give that apology and to receive it. It does. Linda looked at Daniel. I owe you the same kind of apology, a real one. You've already apologized, Daniel said. I know, but I want to say it again, with clarity. Daniel, I'm sorry for betraying you. I'm sorry for choosing status over love. I'm sorry for letting my mother influence me to the point where I couldn't see what I had. You were a good husband, and I threw that away because I was shallow and insecure. Daniel felt Lisa's hand squeeze his under the table. I accept your apology, he said, and I appreciate you saying that. But I also want you to know that I've forgiven you. Not because you deserve it, necessarily, but because holding on to anger was hurting me more than it was hurting you. That's very gracious, Linda said, her eyes welling up. I don't know if I could be as forgiving if our positions were reversed. Maybe you'll never have to find out, Daniel said. Maybe this experience taught you enough that you'll make better choices going forward. I hope so, Linda said. I'm trying to anyway. The conversation shifted to lighter topics. San Francisco neighborhoods, restaurant recommendations, the challenges of starting over in a new city. By the time they finished their coffee, the tension had fully dissolved. As they were leaving, Linda pulled Daniel aside. Can I ask you something? Sure. Are you happy? Really, truly happy? Daniel glanced at Lisa, who was chatting with someone she'd recognized from her gym. He thought about his life, the job he loved, the home he'd built, the relationship that felt easy and genuine, the peace he'd found. Yes, he said, I really am. Good, Linda said softly. You deserve it. You always did. They parted ways with a friendly hug, and Daniel knew it would probably be months before they spoke again. Maybe longer, and that was fine. They'd found closure, real, honest closure that allowed them both to move forward. That evening, Daniel and Lisa were cooking dinner together in his kitchen when his phone rang. It was Patricia. He almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of him. Daniel, I hope I'm not disturbing you. It's fine, Patricia. What's going on? I wanted to thank you again, not just for helping us with Jonathan, but for the financial counselor you recommended. She's been amazing. I'm on a payment plan for my debts, I've created an actual budget, and I'm learning to live within my means. That's great. I'm glad it's helping. There's something else. Patricia's voice wavered slightly. I'm writing a book about my experience, about how I raised my daughter to value all the wrong things, how I nearly destroyed her life with my toxic attitudes about money and status, and how we both learned the hard way what really matters. Daniel was surprised. That's, ambitious. The nonprofit I work for suggested it. They think it could help other women and mothers recognize these patterns before they cause real damage. And I want to do it as a form of accountability. I can't undo what I did to you and Linda, but maybe I can prevent other families from making the same mistakes. I think that's admirable, Daniel said honestly. There's just one thing. I'd like to include your story, how you helped us even after we treated you so poorly, how you showed us what real character looks like. Would you be willing to let me do that? Daniel thought about it, about having his story out there, public and vulnerable. On one condition, he said, anything. You don't make me out to be a saint or a hero. I'm just a person who made some good choices and some bad ones. I want the book to be honest about everyone, including me. I can do that, Patricia said. Thank you, Daniel, for everything. After he hung up, Lisa asked, what was that about? Daniel explained Patricia's book idea. Lisa listened thoughtfully. How do you feel about having your story out there? She asked. Honestly, I think it might help people. And if it prevents even one person from making the same mistakes Patricia made, or the same mistakes I made in tolerating her behavior for so long, then it's worth it. What mistakes did you make? Lisa asked. From everything you've told me, you were a good husband. I was, Daniel agreed. But I also ignored red flags. I married someone who never defended me against her mother's attacks. I stayed in a situation that was slowly eroding my self-worth because I was afraid of being alone. Those were mistakes too. Lisa wrapped her arms around him. We all have those stories. The question is what we learn from them. What did you learn from yours? Daniel asked. That I'm worth more than settling, Lisa said. That I deserve someone who chooses me every single day, not just when it's convenient. That real love is built on respect and partnership, not grand gestures and empty promises. Sounds like we learned the same lessons, Daniel said. From different teachers, maybe. But yeah, same curriculum. They finished cooking dinner and ate on Daniel's back deck, watching the sun set over the bay. It was one of those perfect moments that felt simultaneously special and ordinary. The kind of happiness that doesn't announce itself, but settles quietly into your bones. Later that night, as they were getting ready for bed, Daniel received an email from Agent Gonzalez with an attachment. The subject line read, "Victim Impact Statement, your review requested." He opened the attachment and found a document Linda had written for Jonathan's sentencing hearing. She'd been asked to describe how his con had affected her life. Daniel read through it, Lisa looking over his shoulder. Linda had been brutally honest. She described the shame of realizing she'd been conned, the financial devastation, the breakdown of her relationship with her mother, the loss of her marriage to Daniel. But she'd also written about the unexpected gifts that came from the experience. I learned that I had built my entire identity on shallow values, she wrote. I measured people by their bank accounts instead of their character. I threw away a good man because I was chasing a fantasy of wealth and status. Jonathan Blake didn't just steal my money. He held up a mirror to my worst qualities and showed me who I had become. But because of this experience, I also met a version of myself I didn't know existed. A version that could survive on her own, rebuild from nothing, and learn what really matters. I found the strength to go to therapy, to confront my relationship with my mother, to take responsibility for my choices instead of blaming circumstances. Most importantly, I learned what real character looks like through Daniel Calabro, my ex-husband. After I betrayed him, humiliated him, and discarded him, he still chose to help me. Not because he wanted me back, but because it was the right thing to do. He showed me that true strength isn't about how much money you have or what status you hold. It's about who you choose to be when no one is forcing you to be decent. I hope that Jonathan Blake serves every day of his sentence. I hope he faces real consequences for the pain he's caused. But I also hope he finds, as I have, that losing everything can sometimes be the first step toward finding what actually matters. Daniel closed the document and sat back. Wow, Lisa said quietly. That's powerful. Yeah, Daniel agreed. It is. Do you think she means it, or is it just performance for the court? I think she means it, Daniel said. People can change. Not everyone does, but some people, when they hit rock bottom, actually do the work to climb back up differently than they fell. And Patricia? Same. They both lost everything they thought mattered and found out it was built on sand. That's the kind of wake-up call that either destroys you or transforms you. Looks like they chose transformation. Lisa kissed his shoulder. You helped make that transformation possible by choosing to help them. You know that, right? Maybe, but they did the actual work. True, but you showed them it was possible. Sometimes that's all someone needs. To see that grace exists, that people can choose kindness even when they don't have to. Daniel thought about the long journey from that coffee shop meeting where Linda and Patricia had begged for his help to this moment, where all three of them had found versions of themselves that were better than who they'd been. I learned something too, Daniel said. What's that? That the best revenge isn't making people suffer. It's becoming so happy that their presence in your life stops mattering. It's building something so good that when they come back asking for help, you can give it without it costing you anything emotionally. That's very Buddhist of you, Lisa said with a smile. Is it? Letting go of attachment to outcomes, finding peace in being who you want to be, regardless of external circumstances. Yeah, that's pretty Buddhist. Huh, maybe I should take up meditation. We could do it together, Lisa suggested. There's a class on Saturday mornings at the community center. Meditation class on Saturday mornings, Daniel mused. A year ago, I would have spent Saturday mornings obsessing over my divorce. replaying arguments with Linda, imagining revenge scenarios. And now? Now I'm planning meditation classes with my girlfriend and feeling genuinely happy for my ex-wife's growth. Character development is weird, Lisa laughed. The weirdest. But I like this version of you. Yeah? Yeah, he's kind without being a doormat. He's forgiving without being naive. He knows his worth without needing to prove it to anyone. That's a good person to build a life with. Daniel pulled her close. I like this version of me too. Took a while to get here, but it was worth the journey. 6 months after that, Daniel received an invitation to Patricia's book launch. The book was titled Fool's Gold, A Mother's Memoir of Misplaced Values and Hard-Won Wisdom. He showed the invitation to Lisa. Want to go? Do you want to go? Daniel thought about it. Yeah, I think I do. I'm curious to see how she told the story. They flew to Chicago for the launch, which was held at a small independent bookstore in Lincoln Park. The crowd was modest, maybe 50 people, mostly women who looked like they'd lived through similar experiences of financial loss or toxic family dynamics. Patricia stood at the front of the room, looking nervous but determined. She'd aged since Daniel last saw her, but in a good way, like someone who'd stopped trying to fight time and started accepting it. When she began reading from her book, Daniel was struck by her honesty. She didn't sugarcoat her behavior or make excuses. She described in painful detail how she treated Daniel, how she'd manipulated Linda, how she'd valued wealth over character. I taught my daughter that a man's worth was measured by his bank account, Patricia read. I taught her to trade up, to always be looking for something better, to never settle for just love when she could have love plus luxury. And in teaching her those lessons, I destroyed her marriage to a good man and nearly destroyed her life. During the Q&A, someone asked, "What was the turning point for you? When did you realize you needed to change?" Patricia looked directly at Daniel when she answered, "When the man I'd treated terribly, the man I'd looked down on for years, chose to help my daughter and me even though we didn't deserve it. That's when I realized that I'd spent my whole life worshiping the wrong gods. Money, status, prestige. None of that mattered when we hit rock bottom. What mattered was character, decency, the choice to do the right thing even when no one is forcing you to." After the reading, people lined up to buy books and have them signed. Daniel and Lisa waited until the crowd thinned, then approached. Patricia's eyes widened when she saw them. "Daniel, you came." "I wanted to support you," he said simply. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. "That means more than you know." She turned to Lisa. "You must be Lisa. Linda told me about you." "Guilty," Lisa said with a warm smile. "I've heard a lot about you too." "Nothing good, I imagine." "Actually, Linda spoke highly of the work you're doing now. The transformation you've made." Patricia wiped her eyes. "I'm trying. Every day I'm trying to be better than I was." "That's all any of us can do," Daniel said. Patricia signed a book for them. Her inscription read, "To Daniel, who taught me that true wealth is measured in character, not currency. Thank you for showing me what grace looks like." "Patricia?" As they were leaving, Linda appeared. She'd been sitting in the back row during the reading. "Hey," she said, "I'm glad you came." "Your mom did a good job," Daniel said. "The book is honest." "It is. It's been hard seeing our story out there, but also healing. A lot of women have reached out saying it helped them recognize toxic patterns in their own lives." "That's wonderful," Lisa said. Linda looked at Daniel. "There's something I wanted to tell you. I'm seeing someone. His name is David. He's a teacher, and he makes about $45,000 a year." Daniel smiled. And I'm happier than I ever was with Jonathan. David is kind and funny, and we have actual conversations about things that matter. He reads poetry and volunteers at a literacy program and genuinely cares about making the world better. And I realize that's worth more than all the luxury condos and expensive dinners I ever wanted. I'm really happy for you, Linda. The funny thing is, he reminds me of you, not in looks or personality, but in values, in character. I think I finally learned what I should have known all along. That's the only thing worth building a life around." "Sounds like you figured it out," Daniel said. "Better late than never, right?" Better late than never. They said their goodbyes with genuine warmth. No lingering tension, no unfinished business. Just three people who'd learned hard lessons and come out better for it. On the flight back to San Francisco, Lisa asked Daniel, "How do you feel after seeing them?" "Peaceful," Daniel said. Like that chapter is really finally closed. Not with bitterness or resentment, but with actual resolution. Do you think you'll stay in touch? Maybe occasionally, holiday cards, that kind of thing. But we're not friends, and we never will be. We're just people who shared a painful experience and managed to come through it with some wisdom to show for it. That's very mature, Lisa said. What can I say? Getting conned by your ex-wife's fake billionaire boyfriend while your former mother-in-law watches really builds character. Lisa burst out laughing. When you put it that way, it sounds like a terrible movie. It was a terrible movie, but at least it had a good ending. The best ending, Lisa agreed. The protagonist gets the girl, the villains face justice, and everyone learns valuable lessons about what really matters. Very Hallmark Channel, except with more FBI stings and federal prison sentences. Those are the best Hallmark movies, Daniel said with a grin. They landed in San Francisco as the sun was setting, painting the bay in shades of orange and gold. Daniel looked out the window at the city he'd made his home, at the life he'd built from the ashes of his failed marriage. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's letting people face the consequences of their own actions, while you build something better than what they destroyed. It's choosing kindness when you could choose cruelty, offering grace when you could demand retribution, and walking away with your integrity intact while others scramble to find theirs. Daniel had learned that true strength isn't about how hard you can hit back when someone hurts you. It's about who you choose to be when you have every right to be bitter, but choose to be better instead. As they drove home from the airport, Lisa's hand in his, Daniel thought about the journey that had brought him here. The humiliation, the betrayal, the slow rebuilding of his self-worth, the choice to help Linda and Patricia despite what they'd done, the satisfaction of seeing Jonathan face justice, the peace of knowing he'd done the right thing even when the right thing was hard. And he realized that Linda had been right about one thing all those years ago. He had been too good for her. Not because of his money or status or any external measure of worth, but because he'd understood something she hadn't, that the quality of your character determines the quality of your life, and no amount of wealth can compensate for a poverty of values. That was the lesson Jonathan's con had taught them all. Patricia learned it. Linda learned it. Even Jonathan, sitting in a federal prison cell, was probably learning it. But Daniel had known it all along. He just needed the universe to validate that knowledge by showing him that living by his principles led to genuine happiness, while chasing shortcuts led to disaster. 3 years later, Daniel married Lisa in a small ceremony at a vineyard in Napa Valley. The guest list included close friends, family, and, surprisingly, a card from Linda and Patricia wishing them well. Daniel kept the card, not out of sentimentality for his past with Linda, but as a reminder of how far all of them had come, how pain can be transformed into growth if you're willing to do the work, how grace extended can create ripple effects you never see coming. As he danced with Lisa under string lights while their friends celebrated around them, Daniel thought about the Daniel who'd sat in that coffee shop 3 years ago, facing his ex-wife and her mother as they begged for help. That Daniel had been hurt, angry, conflicted. He'd had every reason to walk away, but he hadn't. And because of that choice, he'd not only saved Linda and Patricia from a predator, he'd saved himself from becoming someone he didn't want to be. That was the real victory. Not seeing Jonathan in prison, not receiving apologies, not even the success he'd built in San Francisco. The real victory was looking in the mirror every morning and genuinely liking the person looking back. Everything else was just details. If you enjoyed this story, like this video and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell